On the show a lot, we talk about how fast generative AI is moving, right? It's like every day, every hour, sometimes almost every minute, it seems like something is changing when it comes to generative AI, large language models, and their impact on business. So, today's topic is something that moves even faster, quite literally. So, today we're going to be talking about how transforming global supply chains with AI, what's happening right now and what's next. This is something I don't know a ton about. And even if this is something that you think doesn't impact you, it definitely does, right? The products we use, the services, right? When we go out to a local business, they're buying things, right? Everything is actually driven by the global supply chain. And although artificial intelligence and machine learning has had a big place in the global supply chain scene, large language models has actually changed that exponentially. So I'm excited to talk about that today on Everyday AI. So what's going on, y'all? My name is Jordan Wilson. I'm the host, and this thing, it's for you. Everyday AI. It is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter, helping us all not just keep up, but how we can actually get ahead by knowing about everything that generative AI is impacting. So that sounds like what you're trying to do. Please go to our website at youreverydayai.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping today's conversation as we do every day, as well as keeping you up to date with all of the AI news, fresh finds, and everything else that you need to be the smartest person in AI at your company. All right. So if you're looking for the daily news that we normally go over right before a show, it's technically a pre-recorded show that we're debuting live. So make sure to check out the newsletter for that. All right. Enough chit chat, y'all. I'm excited to talk supply chain and AI and what's happening and maybe even what's next. All right. So live stream audience, please help me welcome to the show. Today's guest, we have Julian Harris, the CEO and founder of RoboBuy. Julian, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI show.
Hi, Jordan. Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
All right.
All the way
excited.
from Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. I was gonna let people know if they couldn't pick up on the down under accent. So, definitely taking a global viewpoint today, right? But let's start at the top. Like, Julian, what is RoboBuy?
So RoboBuy is a supply chain analytics platform, global supply chain analytics platform. And at the heart of what we do, we extract data for large corporates. It's all B2B spend. We extract data from all and every ERP system that they have. So one of our clients has 43 different ERP systems in their business. They've acquired this over the years from various M&A deals. So they've got 43 ERP systems, and they have no single view of their data. So the problem we're solving is they probably don't know their spend to the nearest $1 billion. And they probably don't know the number of suppliers to the nearest 1,000, because we deal with very large companies like Coca-Cola in Atlanta, MasterCard in New York, really big companies with really big global supply chains. So we extract data using APIs from all of these ERP systems, and we've built proprietary AI algorithms to clean and classify that data to a standard global taxonomy. And then surface that information in various insights and dashboards to various people within the company. So the typical people we work with are the chief procurement officer can now see where they can make savings. They can see which of their suppliers are on contract, which of their suppliers have got purchase orders or not, how many suppliers they've got in a certain category. So if they've got 1,000 suppliers in their laptop category, it probably makes sense to pare those down to about 2 or 3, and in which case they'll save a lot of money from efficiency. So we do a lot of work with chief procurement officers. We do a lot of treasurers where we help them look at the most efficient way to pay for goods. So possibly using virtual credit cards for small payments. And we work very closely with MasterCard and the banks in that area. And then the third area, which has become bigger and bigger, is all around sort of risk compliance, ESG. So we can look through your supply chain and say, hey, you've got some people that are looking like they're flagged on sanctions, or there's people here that look like they've got modern slavery risk, possibly due to where the goods are coming from, or a load of risk factors. There's some suppliers here that look like they've got cybersecurity flags against them. We can tell people how much they're spending with minority groups. Like in the US, a lot of people want to know how much I'm spending with veterinary-led businesses, women-led businesses, things like that, basically. So a whole suite of insights. And as usual, the big issue is, first of all, you have to source and then clean up that data, because quite often the data in these ERPs is quite dirty over the years. And then use AI to sort of come up with some smart insights on the data. Yeah. So that's, in a nutshell, is what we do.
Yeah, no one likes dirty data, right? That's the worst part of your AI journey. But so Julian, so you founded the company, right? Was it about 8 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, 2017 we founded the business in Sydney, but we are a global operation. A lot of our clients are in the US.
So, I'm curious, kind of starting an analytics company in, AI in like right before the generative AI boom of, 2022. How would you say has generative AI changed what you do, but also the bigger picture? How has it changed the global supply chain? I know that's a huge question, right? Because it's probably 1,000 different ways that you can answer it. But from your perspective, what has it been like, kind of the before and then the kind of after or during?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Jordan. This is my second AI company. I set up one in 2016 that we sold to Cognizant in 2020 out of London. And that one specifically focused on, it was a data science, high-end AI consultancy working with the Amazon toolset. And in 2016, even though, as you said earlier, AI algorithms have been there since the 50s, a lot of the maths, that was quite new in 2016. So we were doing a lot of really interesting work. We were predicting client churn for companies. We were predicting the cost of energy for energy traders. We were doing some really, what I would say, cool stuff with very traditional AI and algorithms we've written ourselves. Same with this business. All the IP we've built is really good at doing its job, which is classifying and cleaning spend and supply chain data. Last year, when ChatGPT comes up, it just throws the whole industry up in the air. I mean, the first thing for us is, I think, very much confusion amongst our clients. So, we would say, hey, we've got very proprietary AI that cleans up your supply chain. And obviously, most executives that have been on a plane and read a magazine are now thinking that ChatGPT will do it out of the box. ChatGPT won't do it out of the box, and it's a very different approach. So I think there's been a little bit of education there, but absolutely the pace of change now with the generative stuff is amazing, and it is just sweeping through every type of organization and every sector, and I think the automation we're going to see for the next couple of years are going to be quite stunning, to be honest.
Yeah. When it comes to large language models, and obviously the big step there is the ability to work with unstructured data, right? You said you talked about the need to not have dirty data, right? Yeah. But data is data. Unstructured information is a little hard to work with, except for large language models help that. Yeah. So what potential problems or opportunities kind of are we in the middle of matching up generative AI with opportunities when it comes to supply chain, right? Because like I said, I don't know the supply chain very well. You do. What are those areas just ripe for potential disruption with large language models?
Well, there are a few problems you always get with supply chain. One of the first things is if you're dealing with a large buyer and their 10,000 suppliers, let's say, the problem often have is you don't know what your supplier's supplier is. How big is that supply chain and where does it go? So as an example, you'll be buying batteries in Chicago. Batteries have got cobalt in them. 2/3 of the world's cobalt's mined in the Congo, probably using child slavery. You don't know that because you bought your batteries from the corner shop in Chicago. So seeing through that supply chain is a tricky deal. And we work with one company that actually has cracked that. They've got some incredibly good data and some incredibly good math. And basically, they're using large language models to actually look through any layer of supply chain. So I think you'll see solutions like that coming up. I think you'll see a lot more predictive analytics, a lot more scenario type planning. A lot of the tools today are telling you, what you've done in the past and perhaps how you can change things in the future, because the past is a predictor of the future. But I think there'll be a lot more tools now doing a lot more scenario type planning. In terms of generative AI generally, I mean, once we get into the point, and people are talking about it a lot now, where AI will be writing its own AI. And I think Zuckerberg recently said that AI will be replacing his base level coders in Meta, which is really scary. I mean, I've been in the IT industry forever. And if you think about it, over the last 50 years, we've spent our time offshoring blue collar workers to China. And we've lost a lot of that industrial base. That's America, UK, and Australia. Generative AI is going to now replace the white collar workers, not the blue collar workers. So if you now take out a level of coders, and all coders become, AI prompt engineers or whatever, but there'll be less of them, that's going to be massively disruptive to the world. But to start with, it makes technology so much cheaper, because currently it's an expensive item for most businesses, but you'll end up with a lot of base coders today looking for to upskill, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, a pretty recent story showed that, both Meta and Apple are trying to enter the, AI humanoid robotics space, right? A space that, there's pretty promising, prototypes out there from, Tesla Optimus, from Figure, all of these other companies. At least here in the US, this is a space that's hot on fire. What are your takes on that, right? Like, especially as it comes to the supply chain, to logistics, right? Is it our factories and warehouses going to be just humanoid robots in the near future?
Well, I think if you went and saw an Amazon warehouse, you'd see that it's pretty automated now. I don't know if you've seen videos of those robots. I mean, for sure, the physical supply chain is getting more and more automated by robots. I mean, that's a given. I think what's going to happen is, as I said, there's a lot of what I'd call quite traditional software that's out there. And this is in every space. This will be Salesforce, let's say, dominates CRM. SAP dominates the ERP industry. I mean, in the world of supply chain, at the top end corporate, they're either using Oracle or they're using SAP. Those guys have got nearly 50-50 world share. There's some other things like Microsoft Dynamics and a few other tools there, but at the top end, they're either on SAP or Oracle. And those tools have been around for probably 40 or 50 years, I would have thought, certainly 30 years. Now, those guys are scrabbling like crazy, and you'll see all the ads and the PR out there to transform their products into AI products. But obviously, you're effectively adding onto a code base that's still very old. So I think over the next few years, there are going to be some pure play AI players powered by generative AI that just say, look at the market share that Salesforce has got in CRM, or look at the market share SAP has got in the ERP space, and quite frankly, probably take them out. I think they've got a very, very strong, big stronghold at the moment, but I think generative AI, particularly when you get to the point where AI is writing itself and it's highly automated, the price of producing software becomes like next to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious. You work with a lot of big brands that have a huge global supply chain footprint. What are some of the most common, not mistakes, right? Because that's dirty data happens. But what are some of the most common, redundancies or some of the most common shortcomings that usually have a generative AI solution? Like, what are these things that you're seeing over and over, because maybe that can help us understand, where this intersection is ultimately headed.
Sure. Well, supply chain, I would say, is quite traditional, as in it's probably one of the last areas to change. There's a lot of there's still a lot of manual input into these ERPs. People getting in. This is where the dirty data comes from. Somebody in the accounts payable team in a large corporate will get these invoices coming through. They may be scanned, hopefully. They may not be. They're double entering into SAP. They make mistakes, or they're really busy. They've got to enter 500 a day, so they don't bother putting in the details. Instead of saying what each line item is that they bought, they'll just put stuff at the top. Bought some stuff, $10,000. Now, when you're then trying to classify that data for some execs to look at what they're paying in each category, it's very hard if somebody has just titled something stuff. Yeah. So, you need to go back and look at the supplier, perhaps go and scrape some data from the internet about the supplier, throw that into a model and start predicting things that way. But yeah, I mean, the industry has always been, quite traditional, quite slow at adapting to some of the technologies, and not as joined up as it should be. For a while, we've had AI that can read contracts and read documents and things like that. Certainly, large language models are making that way more accurate and way more efficient. So, I think to automate the end-to-end supply chain without these sort of gaps where humans are double entering things would make a massive difference. But I think certainly using a large language models, it's right for somebody to take just a totally different approach to the supply chain.
Yeah. So, we've kind of touched on, or at least the way I see it, on some of the front end of the supply chain. So, manufacturing, warehousing. What about on the latter side, right? So when we look at transportation, distribution, customer delivery, all of those things, where do you think we're headed next, right? Like I've always thought, like, 20 years ago, if I would have thought about this, I'd be like, oh, we're going to have, fully self-driving cars and drone deliveries and all these things. It doesn't look like we're quite there, right? But at least when it comes to large language models, how are they going to find their place in the near future in those other places, such as transportation, distribution, customer delivery, etc.?
Well, I think there's a lot of work being done in that area by the real specialists. I mean, Amazon is probably the leader, I'd say, in those sort of logistics. And I think individual companies just can't spend the way that somebody like an Amazon can in that sort of technology. So you see a lot of the more sophisticated companies outsourcing a lot of that logistics to people like Amazon. And they are trialing drone deliveries, you will get automated vehicles delivering this stuff, I'm sure. I mean, the drone deliveries, I think that Amazon are doing, the trials have been quite successful. When it moves to mass rollout, I don't know. But I mean, all of those are now controlled because obviously there's a navigation piece, there's a safety piece. All of these are now controlled and going to be controlled by large language models for sure.
So, one thing that, I'm always looking at is how generative AI specifically can help even non-technical people make better decisions. How does that ultimately play out in your space? When it comes to predictive insights, scenario planning, right? Is this something that maybe it's only for the big global players when it comes to using this in their supply chains, or are some of the smaller guys able to finally get some of this technology because of large language models that has maybe only been afforded to those companies that had big data teams for decades?
No, I think the technology, I mean, starting with ChatGPT and now, all the others that are coming fast behind, it's becoming very accessible, very cheaply for just your average worker. I mean, everyone now that's got a Microsoft laptop has got Copilot available to them, and Copilot will just, I mean, they drop in new versions every other month as it appears. I mean, that will just get more and more powerful, and it's designed for the business user to use, not a techie, basically. Anthropic did a big deal with Amazon, so Amazon, pushing more and more products out there. I mean, everyone's talking about this year we're moving from chatbots, effectively AI chatbots, to AI agents, which essentially are just smarter versions. But essentially, these are going to be in the hands of the user. I mean, just from an efficiency point of view, in my company now, very few people are building PowerPoint decks. They're telling AI to build a PowerPoint deck. Very few people build the start of a Excel spreadsheet. They get ChatGPT or Copilot to build it and perhaps just do a little bit of editing. I mean, I think most people, like just office workers, are getting into the groove, and people like Microsoft are going hard at free training for all these people. Mm-hmm. It'll take a while, a little bit of a culture shift, but certainly, the next generation of workers coming in, if there's one skill they need, it'll be how to maximize the use of AI. Otherwise, they'll get left behind.
Speaking of what's next, I have to ask you that. So as someone that has two separate, AI companies, you said your other one was acquired and you have a successful company now. What do you think is next, or what is maybe, keeping you up at night with whether it's excitement or worry, at least when it comes to generative AI in the supply chain? What are you looking at?
So I'll start with our suite of products. It is excitement and worry, as you say, because we built some very some very specific models over the last 8 years. And obviously the question in your head, as soon as ChatGPT pops up, is that all now replaceable by this simple LLM that's popped up and it rendered our whole product worthless? So, I think everyone at the moment are doing a bit of navel gazing, including all the big players, and strip down all their product and understanding, okay, what have I got that's defensible, and what actually could I replace with a large language model? Because obviously, if there are parts of my suite of products I could replace with a large language model, and that's what we're looking at now, in many ways that makes it more efficient and easier to maintain, and has more features around predictive and things like that, basically. So I think most people are looking at that. I think, as we said earlier, I think some of the big players must be very worried. If I was SAP and Oracle, I would be worried that somebody's just going to come in and build a pure AI version of the ERP, because that is, a massive multi-billion-dollar business. There's obviously going to be a ton more automation. So in terms of supply chain, typically, if you're in a Coca-Cola or a Walmart, they might have hundreds of category managers analyzing each category under a procurement head. A lot of those jobs will disappear because a lot of that stuff will just be automated using large language models. What to buy, who to buy from, which suppliers to let go, which suppliers to spend more with. All that is easily automatable with this sort of product. And I think, as we said earlier, I think you'll see a lot more predictive analytics coming out with the large language models and scenario planning and things like that. A lot more intelligent, forward-facing stuff.
Mm. All right. So, Julian, we've covered a lot in today's
Yeah.
conversation, but as we wrap up, what do you think is the one most important thing? And this is a big question, so answer it how
Yeah.
you may. What is the one most important thing you think people need to keep in mind when thinking about the supply chain, generative AI, and where we're headed next?
Um, the single biggest problem they're going to have is where is my data?
Mhm.
What state is it in? How do I get it into a place where it's even usable for AI? Because it absolutely, I agree with you. Large language models can deal with unstructured data, absolutely. But if that unstructured data is fundamentally rubbish, it's still going to have problems. Yeah, I mean, we've built search engines and all sorts of things in the past. Unstructured isn't necessarily a problem. There's technology that's been doing that for a while, but the quality of the data. So with most people, they've had hundreds of different systems. They're not joined up. So the first job is, where's my data? How do I access it? How do I clean it up? Once I've cleaned it up, how do I make sure that I've got policies in place that it is cleaned up? So it's all around data. I mean, the other thing to think about is data sovereignty and a bunch of other things around that. There's too many people at the moment will throw their data into something like ChatGPT, unaware that they're now sharing that with the world. Yeah. Now, you can still use the models on your own infrastructure or private clouds, and there's ways around that. But people really need to think through their data from, where is it? How do I access it? How do I clean it up? How do I make sure I've got policies to keep it clean and accurate going forward? But also, how do I secure it and, make sure that all my privacy settings and security settings are right?
All right. So a lot to think about there. I think some great takeaways, whether you're in the supply chain or not. I think today's conversation is an important one to have. So, Julian, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI Show. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jordan. My pleasure.
All right. And as a reminder, y'all, we covered a lot. If this was helpful, if you're listening on the podcast, please go ahead, click that subscribe button and leave us a rating if you could. If you're listening online, share this with someone that's in the industry. Keep them up to date. Let them know what's happening and what's next. Also, if you haven't already, please go to youreverydayai.com. Sign up for that free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping today's conversation with Julian and a whole lot more. So thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you back tomorrow and every day for more.